Hi there, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we're going over the Panasonic Lumix S1R and the kit lens, the 24-105. Let's get started. The Panasonic S1R is a 47 megapixel full-frame mirrorless camera with 5-axis in-body stabilization that works alongside the stabilization in the lenses, 225 focus points, and features Leica's L-mount system. It has a tilting touch LCD screen, has a continuous drive of 9 frames per second, and a 4K or 6K photo burst feature. This camera also has dual card slots, one for XQD and one for SD that is UHS 2 compatible, 4K video up to 60 frames, a microphone and a headphone port, and it is environmentally sealed. Today we'll be going over the doors, buttons, and menus to help you understand this camera a little better. So this being the Panasonic S1R, it's going to be very similar to the S1 video that I did. Actually, it's pretty much going to be exactly the same, other than, your typical specifications of, because the S1R, R stands for resolution, it does have a higher megapixel. Now these pictures that I had taken in the example reel, I actually decided to use this camera specifically because I am taking pictures of mine and my husband's setup for YouTube channel's room tour project and Setup Wars. Me and my husband are big fans and we have gathered inspiration from those channels, so we decided to take some pictures of it and turn it in, see if we can appear on one of their videos. And as you can see, this camera does a fantastic job at 47 megapixels. The only downfall, of course, was the shadow areas, because naturally it was going to pick up a little bit more noise there, having a little less sensitivity to light than the S1. However, I still find that this camera is pretty amazing, although I will say that, of course, the S5 does come out on top of this just because it is a newer, smaller, lighter camera. Going over the front of the camera here, we're going to go ahead and start with the lens. As you can see, we do have a lock feature that does lock that lens in place for when we're not using it, or if we're walking around and we don't want that barrel to slowly slide out, as they tend to do after a certain amount of use. You have your autofocus and manual focus switch here, and you also have your optical image stabilizer in the lens, which you can turn on or off. And of course you would always want to turn that off when you have this camera on a tripod, due to the tripod now stabilizing rather than the camera. We do have a little switch here with a 1 and 2. These are programmable. They're just programmable modes that you can do. You also have 3 buttons down in the grip here. This one, of course, is going to be for removing the lens, and then when you want to put a lens back, you line up that red dot with the red dot here. You turn and click, good to go. The other 2 are going to also be function buttons, so these are also programmable. You'll also find that a lot of these newer cameras have all of these really high customizable options. So you have function buttons, you can change the function of preset buttons. There's all sorts of different things you can do here, as you'll find when we go through this camera. Up here you'll see that we have a little removable door here with the flash symbol. This is going to be where your flash sync cable goes. On this side of the camera here, you see we have our autofocus assist LED here, which will shine out a little light to help this camera focus, whether due to lack of light or lack of detail. You have one of your adjustment knobs here and one here, which we'll get to back there later, which can change anything from aperture and shutter speed, ISO. Going to the side of the camera here, you see we have our door, which will push this lever down and then slide out for that to pop open. As you can see, slot 1 will take an XQD card, and slot 2 will take an SD card that is UHS 2 compatible. This means that it has 2 sets of contacts instead of the regular one, making it much faster than a regular SD card. On the other side of the camera here, you can see that we have a door for a shutter release for a remote control. You can see we have another door here for microphone and headphone port. And then a third door that will give you charging and transfer capability for USB-C and a full-size HDMI port. So you can just use a regular HDMI cable to view pictures, videos straight from the camera if you want to share on a bigger screen. On the bottom of the camera here, you can see that we do have our universal screw mount for our tripod, and we have our battery door here as well. I'm just going to pull this little gray lever here. That battery will be removable. Going to the top of the camera here, but right below our mode dial here, you can see we have our drive dial, which does feature the single square for a single shot. When you press and hold that shutter button down, it takes one picture. The first continuous drive is going to be that 9 frames per second, and the second is going to be that 4K, 6K burst. And then of course you have time-lapse and timer options there as well. Going over the mode dial specifically, we're going to start in IA here. So IA is going to be your intelligent auto. This is going to allow the camera to do all of the settings for you. This is a great setting to be in when you're first getting started with this camera, if you're unfamiliar of the layout, unfamiliar of your settings completely and how they work in the camera. It just allows you to bond with your camera a little bit before really jumping in and start playing with things. When it comes to the P mode, that's program, that's going to be your first step off of auto if it is your first time, where you can start playing with aperture and shutter speed to a limit, where the camera will assist you in everything else to ensure that the picture does indeed come out. Then you have your A mode, which is your aperture mode. This of course is going to be for adjusting your aperture in the lens. That's going to be the opening, how much light you let in. It also controls the depth of field, that nice blurry background, sharp foreground. You then have the S mode, which is going to be your shutter speed mode. That's where you control the speed, while the camera controls the light intake. And you have manual, which is of course going to be all you. It's going to only do what you tell it to. And then we jump into the movie mode. Now, you don't have to be in the movie mode in order to do a video. All you have to do is on the back of the camera here, you have the red button. Push that once to start recording, push it again to stop recording. And then if you are in the video mode, you can use the shutter button as well to trigger, record, stop record. Biggest difference between using your movie mode or any of your manual modes or even your auto mode to do a video is really just going to be how the menu is laid out. You don't have to go to this mode specifically if you want to record. Then of course you have C1, C2, and C3. Those buttons there are going to be your custom modes. You can save certain settings to those modes. That way you can go back later and resume in that location or that lighting setup that you had. Then we have our hot shoe or cold shoe, depending on what you're going to use it for. This can be used to mount a microphone, a external flash, LED lighting, anything that has that mount. That's what that is going to be for. Left side of the viewfinder, you see LVF. This is going to control the live viewfinder option. That's going to be for telling the camera, I just want to use the viewfinder, I just want to use the screen, or I want it to automatically trigger back and forth when I bring my eye up to that sensor. And on the right side of the viewfinder, this is where you're going to find the V mode option here, and that just controls the coverage amount that you're seeing inside the viewfinder of essentially what the window sees, so it can shrink it back a little bit farther if needed. You also may have noticed that there's a little wheel right here. This wheel is the diopter, so it's going to adjust your viewfinder to your eye. Now, you may wear glasses. I don't wear glasses, which means we see a little differently. So if you wanted to do this without your glasses, you could adjust this little diopter here so you can use that viewfinder. So we also have a focus mode switch here, which is going to give us the options S, C, and MF. This, of course, is going to be for single autofocus, where it's going to focus and lock onto your subject, something that's typically still, not moving. You have C for continuous autofocus. This, of course, is going to be for something that may be moving or you're anticipating is going to move. And then you have MF for manual focus, which, again, you can switch to manual focus on a good amount of the L-mount lenses. Then we have our display screen here, which we use our on and off switch and turn this on, you'll actually see that a lot of our settings are going to pop up right on the top. So right off the bat, you can see what the white balance is, which is also controllable from this button here. You can see what the metering is, which you can change from the back of the camera. We'll get to that in a moment. It shows what your exposure is, what format of pictures you're taking, whether RAW or JPEG, your battery level, your ISO, how many pictures you have left if you have an SD card in the camera. And then when you're pointed at something and you push the shutter button halfway down for it to meter, it tells you right there, it tells you it's going to be what ISO, what f-stop, and what shutter speed. Now a whole number of course is going to be a fraction, so it's 1/60th of a second. Otherwise, if you see the little inch symbol, the little two quotes, it's going to be solid seconds long. And we have a little light bulb here. This is to get this back window to light up so we can see it in dark situations. And now we are headed to the back of the camera here. So we do have a lock switch here. This is going to be to lock certain things from being able to accidentally change it, whether on the screen or any of those settings there. We do have a playback button. Now naturally I don't have a memory card, but if I did, this would just start displaying the photos, and then I can use my directional pad here to go forward and backward through the photos themselves. And by the way, if you get stuck in any menu or screen that you don't want to be in, you just want to get back to taking pictures, you're just going to hit that shutter button halfway down and get you right back in to focusing mode. Or I should say picture taking mode. Anywho, we've already gone over the red button for video. We have gone over this dial here. This is the single, continuous, and manual focus. If we push this back button here, that will pertain to our focusing options of our autofocus area. We have our back button autofocus if you want to use a back button there. A lot of Nikon shooters are typically used to this, but Panasonic implemented it in this model. And we also have the joystick here, which is going to move around our focus point, but this is also touch screen as well, so it'll actually change as you change the area when you touch the screen. We have our quick menu here, which will give us some quick things to change. Whoops. By the way, this moves as well, it rotates. So if we go up to the top, we have our photo style. This is how it is going to display different color. Typically, I like to do standard and adjust my color from there, but you have vivid, you have natural, you have monochrome, all of those. You have your white balance, which again, you can change by the top here as well as the ISO. Also change that from the top. You can also adjust contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, sharpness, noise reduction, all in camera before you take the shot, which is pretty great. And it's especially great for those that do a lot of landscaping that want to do all those fine adjustments. We have your drive mode, which of course is controlled by this dial up here. We have your aspect ratio, which 3:2 is going to be full screen. And then of course you have your flash mode, depending if you have an off-camera flash, as this camera does not have a built-in flash option. We have our menu button here, which we're going to go over last. Like I said, we also have an adjustment knob here, which you can use as a directional pad. We have the back button. We have your display button, which changes the display that you're seeing on the back of the screen here, whatever your preference may be. My personal preference is probably this one. Even though it is pretty busy, I still get direct information for how much battery life, how many pictures do I have left, all of this sort of stuff. And then we have our trash can as well to delete pictures on your playback mode if you know that there's one that you definitely don't want to keep. We're going to go ahead and head over to our menu here. So me personally, I'm not a fan of this menu. A lot of people love this menu, but for me, I feel that it's a little buried. But we're all entitled to our personal preferences. You know, some people love Panasonic, some people don't like Panasonic. I happen to respect all cameras. I just don't happen to be a fan of the menu. But I'm going to go through it just for you guys. When it comes to going through the menu, you'll find that when I mentioned before how a lot of the outside of this camera is highly customizable, you'll find that a lot of the things that are in this menu are laid out on the outside of the camera. That, or It may be something I skip over because it might make sense to one person out of whoever else is watching this. If that's the case and I do skip over something that you would like me to go through, please let me know in the comments below. I will be happy to explain whatever I didn't go over in enough detail for you, because my goal here is to help you learn something. So definitely let me know. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start in the first tab of the menu here. Is going to be our photo taking tab. We're going to start at the top. So again, we have photo style, metering mode. This is where you would change your metering mode here, where it's taking the light from. You have evaluative, spot, center, whatever you would like. You have your aspect ratio, picture quality. So again, RAW, JPEG, RAW and JPEG. It all depends on what you would like to do. Picture size, that's really just going to be changeable in JPEG options. HLG photo, high resolution mode, long exposure noise reduction, ISO sensitivity for photos. I like to set a limit on this. So the auto upper limit setting, I would probably put like 1600, 3200 on this camera, right in there. That way, if you are learning about your camera and maybe ISO is unfamiliar to you, this will help you be able to learn to nail down your aperture and your shutter speed before really playing with ISO. You have your minimum shutter speed, eye dynamic range, vignetting, diffraction compensation, filter settings, all of these. You have your focus options here, so you have focus peaking. I like to have that on when I do manual focus. That allows it to outline the subject that's in focus, so you can really nail in whether what you want is in focus or not. One area autofocus moving speed, if you want it to kind of follow focus. We have all of your flash modes here. Again, this is only usable when it comes to an external flash. And we have our others options. So we have bracketing, the image stabilizer, your burst shot options on the burst dial here, your shutter type, shutter delay, your time. You can do time lapse or animation in camera, the self timer, 4K 6K photo, post focus, which just allows you to take a picture and then choose your focus point after the fact, which is kind of neat, especially for those close-up photographers. Multiple exposure, so if you wanted to take multiple pictures and merge them together. And then the next tab here is actually going to be our video tab. Now, this is going to be very, very similar to the photo taking tab. It's just going to be more geared toward video itself. So we have exposure mode, photo style, metering mode. All of these are going to be the same. You have your record quality instead of your photo quality, so you can do 4K or HD. You have high speed video, record file format, the luminance level, your autofocus custom settings for video, if you would like the continuous autofocus, what mode you would like that in. Focus peaking, again, I like to have that on, especially if you're doing any sort of manual focusing. You have sound record level display, which I like to have on there when I'm doing video. It shows me whether or not my mic is peaking or not. You have the sound record level adjust, which is amazing. You have sound record level limiter, wind noise canceller, the mic socket, sound output, HDMI record, again, image stabilizer. That again is something you want to turn off if you have this on a motorized stabilizer or a tripod or anything like that. And then image area of video if you would like that full or cropped. The next one here is going to be our general settings. So if we start up at the top, you have photo style settings. These are all going to be fairly custom, or you're basically customizing little tidbits in the camera, technical options. So you have ISO increments. You're really never going to change these. Color space, you really want to keep an sRGB. Exposure comp reset, that's going to be preference. I personally keep mine off, but I do a really good job of remembering when I've compensated for my exposure. So that's up to you. You have focus shutter priority if you would like it to prioritize focusing or just taking the picture, whether it's in focus or not. You have focus switch for vertical and horizontal. Autofocus, auto exposure, lock hold, the manual focus assist options, focus ring lock, pinpoint autofocus setting, so all of these are going to be highly customizable. You may only use these one time. You have half press shutter. I don't recommend that. I had a customer try that and it was just taking pictures like crazy of pictures that he wasn't ready to take a picture of. You have quick autofocus, eye sensor autofocus, looped focus frame. You have your quick menu settings if you want to change that around. Again, that is also customizable. So your touch settings, lock lever settings, your different function buttons, all of those are customizable to do whatever you would like it to. All to the dial setting, the joystick settings, the illuminated button, which by the way just means that these buttons here are all back illuminated, which at least for me, that's the first time I've really seen that on a camera, which is really, really cool. So if you're in a dark situation, they don't send off a ton of light. It just allows you to be able to clearly see these in the dark. You have your auto review, how long you would like your review to be on for, if you want to display the histogram, the photo grid line, center marker, the monochrome live view if you want to think like a camera and see things in black and white, which will allow you to see more of those midtones and gray tones to properly expose. You can absolutely do that. You have night mode, the live viewfinder, monitor display settings, focal length, how many photos, videos remaining, what your priority is there, show or hide monitor layout, blinking highlights, zebra pattern. All of these are going to be one of those things that you might change one time and then just leave it alone. And then we go to our wrench here, which is going to be more just general settings in the camera. So the first thing here is regarding the card. There's card format. Now, not a lot of people understand what formatting means, and when they come across this, they'll either come across it on purpose or on accident, and you never want to find yourself across this on accident and get curious and press it to find out what happens. Formatting means that it is permanently erasing all data on the card. Now that may sound bad and very scary, but you're actually supposed to do that every now and then. When it comes to formatting your cards, you always want to make sure that you back up your pictures to your computer first, a safe source, whether it's an external hard drive, an iCloud account, whatever it may be. You want to make sure you take the pictures off the card and make sure they're someplace safe. Now, if you're the type of person to save each card with the pictures and just go out and buy a new one for every new event in your life, that's fine. You don't have to format your cards. But if you're the type of person to use your cards, you have kind of a rotation going, you want to make sure that when you back up your pictures to your computer, you've ensured they're backed up, that you go in and you format your card. And what that's going to do is it's going to completely reset the card to how you purchased it. It's going to flush everything out, all the data, reintroduce itself to the camera, and be ready to go. The reason you want to do that instead of using the trash can to delete everything is because when you use the trash can, you're just deleting the visible file, not the data, which just makes it overwritable. So if you overwrite that photo over and over and over and over again without ever formatting your card, it can get an overload of data and back data that can actually corrupt your card, lock you out of your pictures, and you're in the middle of an important shoot and all of a sudden, no more pictures. So for the safety of your future images, make sure every now and then you just go in and format your card when you've backed it up. There's also the double card slot function, what you would like each slot to do for XQD and the SD card. You have your folder file settings, file number reset, which I don't recommend doing, but again, totally preference. Your copyright information, your power save mode, the frame rate of your monitor, the frame rate of your viewfinder, monitor settings, eye sensor. Then you have your Wi-Fi settings to connect this to the Panasonic app. Now it's not the Panasonic Image app, it's going to be the other one that supports the S cameras. Had to find that out the hard way. But you can access the app through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to transfer pictures from the camera to your phone or wireless device. You can also use the phone as a remote control as well, along with a few other things if you check out the Panasonic app video that I did. Then there's the USB connection, the battery information, TV connection, save to custom mode, load custom mode, and then resetting your camera as well. So say you're playing with your camera and now it's doing something funny, you don't know what you did, and you don't know how to change it back. Oops. You're going to make sure that you go down, you go to reset, and that's going to reset all of your settings in the camera to how you purchased it. If it's still giving you a problem, then there may be something wrong with your camera. But this is going to be a good fail-safe when it comes to, I don't know what I did, I don't know who to call. Just reset your camera and hopefully that'll fix the problem. You have your clock set and time zone. You always want to make sure that you do this right out of the box. That way it doesn't bug you every time it comes on. And naturally, if you don't have these set, it'll actually stop you from using certain features. So you want to make sure that does get set. Pixel refresh, sensor cleaning, the language firmware version, if you want to check to make sure that the firmware is fully updated. Online manual, approved regulations. And then we also have two other tabs here, which by the way, this is fully touchscreen, so you can also access this with your finger. The My Menu tab is the little person, the second from the bottom. What this is, ooh, surprise, another customizable thing on this camera. This allows you to take anything that we just went through in the actual menu and apply it toward this single tab. You can pick out a few select important ones like, metering and formatting my card and resetting the camera. You can add it to the My Menu settings so that way when you go into your menu, you're not scrolling and scrolling and scrolling to find these things you know you're going to use. You just have to go to My Menu tab and it's there. So that's kind of a nice option there. And then the last tab here is going to be for the playback button here. So we have rotating the rotate display, picture sorting by date and time, magnifying from autofocus point. You have raw processing, the 6K, 4K photo bulk saving, which is kind of a mind blower here. If you wanted every picture in that burst, you can just have it save all of them. So I'm going through one by one, which is great. You also have the noise reduction option, time-lapse video, stop motion video, protect or rate your photos, resize, rotate, divide videos, copy, and then your delete confirmation option if you want to highlight delete first or cancel first. But other than that, that pretty much sums up the Panasonic S1R. As part of the Panasonic family, as long as you don't mind a little weight and you like a good grip on your camera, but you also love the mirrorless line, the S1R is pretty fantastic. It does have a great quality to it. And if you guys have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, please leave me a comment below. That way I can make sure I can answer any of your questions. If you have another camera or maybe a lens comparison that you would like me to do, also leave that comment below and I'll be sure to add it to my list. And until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye.